soft effect around us, like angelic angels.
We are angelic angels. That's an introduction done. And we're also an old friend from Speaker's Corner. And Dust, codename Dust, would like to know, why did I leave England for Jordan?
Well, I would say hello as well. I think whether do we have to?
Mine's not as good as yours, but I have to point. Don't worry, it's okay. I'll keep doing this. No.
Okay. Well, firstly, I haven't seen Khalid for how long is it?
A year and a half, possibly. A year, more than a year.
So it's been. I feel uncomfortable.
Be comfortable. No, he's comfortable now. I said that he'd be comfortable. He's comfortable. Is that right?
Is this
distant far enough?
We're close together. Surely it's going to work.
Oh, okay. Go on then. Let's hope.
And we're close together.
All right.
Sorry about that. Just being pointing to my face is not what I was designed for. My biology is different.
Cool.
If you know what I mean.
Nobody knows what you mean.
I'm sure there's one person out there, a cheeky little fella.
There's only going to be 3 viewers, so it's the probability is low. Anyway,
probability low. Anyway, so I haven't seen you for some time. I got a message a couple of days ago, which I missed, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's fantastic news!" So I sent an email straight back as soon as I saw it, and here we are now at our special location.
Yeah,
I'm really glad to see you. We've just been talking and catching up, and celebrating our existence with what we've done since we've last met each other. So I was talking about being a troubadour, and you were talking about your time in
Jordan.
Oh, yeah,
yep.
And so that's where we're at now. And I suggested a topic of conversation now, which would be and should be, and we'll expand on this and go around this. But why did Khalid go to Jordan? Over to you.
Sure. Whole bunch of things. Life is cheaper. Weather's better. People are more friendly. It's safer, despite what you might see in the news. So safer for the average person. So yes, we have bombs, rockets flying over. We should never kill anybody here in Jordan. Sorry. So we don't have crime, we don't have people robbing each other, to the extent that the shopkeepers are often not in the shops. You have to often go to next door shop where they might be chatting with their friends because they're so unconcerned about anybody stealing anything. So I do regular YouTube shorts of my life in Jordan, so you can even find that on my channel. The fact that there's no crime means you have scenes like you go at midnight, and there's a massive area. You can they don't really have grassy areas, so they're like paved areas or something. And little kids have their little cars and stuff, and they drive around in their backyard. Do you know what I mean? Cars and little, not real cars.
I think I understand.
Okay, they bring that along to these public areas where everybody's just doing their thing. There's rollerblading, they're all in each other's face. You know what I mean? There's not that there's just no crime, but people are comfortable with each other. They go, "Oi, why are you riding your bike in the middle of this public area and stuff like that?" Nobody's uncomfortable with everybody. They're just kind of chilled with each other. So I enjoyed that experience, Yeah. So what do you think? And like I said, food is so cheap. The good quality food is cheap. You know what I mean? Like fresh bread, 10p, massive piece of bread. You can eat. It's great. So I love the human experience of being in Jordan.
Yeah, when I've been to places of that economic level. I've definitely noticed that the food is exquisite. Exquisite. The cheapest bread is 1 billion times better than the food, which is can buy from a horrible place like Tesco's. But the one very clear difference we've got to remember is that lots of clear differences, by the way, human rights, etc. But the clear difference here is that capitalism pollutes the food chain and perverts it, where in Jordan and countries of that economic level, it is totally dominated by capitalist concept of what food is. And in Europe, the idea of food isn't so much to feed a nation, but for one or two people to get filthy rich off, while everyone is punished with the lowest quality and vile food possible, because maximising profit in a capitalist system is the only thing of interest for a capitalist. And we, the people, are chronically punished. And in places like Jordan and Africa, where I went, on that level, it's so not prevalent. There's still local, hate to say the word, but local farms, local shops and local farms, and the idea of a monopoly over the food industry is so much less prevalent. Therefore, you have genuine taste, genuine choice, and genuine capability of being able to be rewarded for the food you eat. And but what was the point I was going to make? And no pesticides. Oh yeah, the point I was going to make is that even though Africa and Jordan and places like this are so free from capitalism, they still have to conform to the wheat which is sold by a few capitalist companies. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but you're not allowed to own seed. The farmer is not allowed to own the seed. They get given a seed every single year from the capitalist. Here's the seed. You're not allowed to grow your own seed.
I thought that's only people who buy into, Bill Gates and GM kind of seeds, but you don't have to buy into it. I thought you had a choice.
It's a monopoly. If you don't buy into it, then you're punished severely with sanctions and other tools of insidious nature regarding the control and ownership of a country.
Wow. But I want to just say how right you are about the fact that we don't really have monopolies. Like when I talk about my life back in England, I mentioned something like Tesco. They go, "What? There's one guy who owns loads of shops." Do you know what I mean? That's really strange for them, and it's really nice having these individual shops because they have their random feels. They're not mechanized. Everybody knows your name when you go to the shop. And not just that. To build on this theme of how it's not capitalist, it's like you go to a shop, right, and there might be the older fruit on the outside, and just talking about one of my local fruit shops, right, and slightly better fruit or the newer fruit inside, and they will ask you, where did you get the fruit from? There's that kind of trust, do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like this capitalistic mechanistic system. And it's deadly cheap, except for some fruit. No, some fruits are expensive, but the basic, onions, vegetables, whatever you need, that's really cheap. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, And often it's really common for people to go, you know what, you can have it for free, but I'll try not to say yes. It's a very common thing. Just have it for free. Don't worry about it.
So fruit in an arid country must be a luxury, surely. I mean, water is a limited resource. I believe, correct me if I get this wrong, that you have to have water delivered to your location and it's rationed to a certain degree. So the idea of fruit must be a classification of a luxury because the amount of water fruit occupies.
Yeah, I have noticed fruit is relatively expensive. When I say relatively expensive, it's like everything else feels like it's almost free. Do you know what I mean? Like 10p piece of bread is expensive one, 5p is your average one. Do you know what I mean? So it can be a little bit expensive. I think a couple of apples because apples are not that common. They might be like £1, like 5 apples or something. I can't remember because I don't look too closely at the price of things because generally things are quite cheap.
That's lovely. Again, in the UK, just to go back to this point, food is classed as something not as a human right, but as a necessity for a rich person to get richer. They make gross profit, even though people at food banks in the UK who are hungry, going without adequate food and food of real quality. Because even people that can afford food every day can barely afford to eat food which isn't full of pesticides and hasn't been conceived in a way which is detrimental to humanity and the community. I think we got off the subject.
Did we go?
Yeah, go on. The subject is so you with. I know we kind of haven't.
No, it's part of the topic. Like, why did I go to Jordan?
Yeah, why you go
and
to Jordan?
less crap in the food.
Food, yeah. So we're still on the subject.
Yeah.
I think we should move on to another part of why you came over to. You went over to Jordan.
So we could. What is it like the weather? I mean, I've talked about price. So the weather. The great thing about the weather is that it's predictable. So it does rain, but only in the winter for a few months, and then it won't rain for the rest of the year. And so you can. That makes a massive difference in, like, you can just be outside. It's very hard to have loads of indoor locations to chill out because that's going to be more expensive. You need a building. Buildings cost money. But outdoors, it doesn't cost money. So there's loads of people on the sides of the streets, their family, they just go into a little circle, they have a bit of coffee or tea in the middle, biscuits, and maybe actually not even biscuits, seeds. Seeds and nuts are really popular in Jordan. They have whole shops for them, which is really nice because it's healthy and it's cheap.
Very healthy.
Yeah, and tea is cheap, and so it makes socializing cheap. Like over here, you managed to find out a deal to find cheap coffee, but like coffee is ridiculous price of like £5 or something. I can't remember what. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I was at Speaker's Corner, and then I went to the local Sainsbury's, and I was going to get a sandwich for £5. I was like, £5? You can get a massive meal in Jordan for £5.
And that £5 buys you a rubbish sandwich.
Yeah.
Absolutely gross quality.
Yeah, and instead I've shown videos where you go to the bakeries. When you say bakeries, there's sweets and all sorts of like homemade or locally made bits of food there. It's like the poshest deli. It looks like a if it was in England, it would look like the poshest deli. Everything's like locally made and whatever. And you got bread just being churned out just in front of you. Do you know what I mean? And it smells great as well. Hot bread, you know. So definitely agree with the quality is not even comparable. And just to support what you're saying, the government makes sure that wheat and whatever bread is cheap. They make sure that it never gets inflated, so the average person can afford their basic needs.
So you talked about socialising. You've talked about food. What about social services for people who live in poverty? What is that like?
I think it's bad because we've never really had to go to the hospital, hardly ever, and it's very cheap to get one-off services. I think it's pretty cheap. Yeah. So, but there was one time, and I think it was like 15 years ago. For some reason, we were on holiday in Jordan. My wife had to, and it was a terrible experience. But I can't. I know from what my wife said that it's not good. The free service is not good. Were you just talking about? If you're not just talking about hospitals and just public services, one interesting thing they do, they have these mini supermarkets where it's government controlled. So you literally got people in the army on the checkouts, which is because it's run.
Very odd.
I mean they use the army for all sorts of things, right? So basically, it just shows that it's come from the government. So Yeah, I'm not. I went there once or twice, but I didn't feel like it was all the best quality stuff there. I didn't really like it too much. Maybe I have to go there again, but I don't think it was that great. But the normal non-government controlled supermarkets, just the bakeries and stuff, they're really cheap. They're really healthy, and everything's made locally, and people are friendly. I love it.
So in the West, there's things that never really get focused on or talked about, which is been huge human rights improvement here regarding free health service. We used to have, it's now basically privatised here, going back to the capitalist ways. And social service protecting, make sure that families have food, families have heating, families have access to health, education. All this was in the West and in Europe particularly as well, and Scandinavian countries. In the UK has been corroded by capitalism because these free services meant that you had a decency of life, and that means when you have decency of life, you have not only self-respect for yourself, but people of different religions, different cultures and different ideas. And fundamentally, you have a happiness, which is why it's so important to have social services protecting each other and making sure that no one slips below the lowest level. Because when that happens, Khaled is alluded to in Jordan, you end up with desperation, and desperate people always end up blaming foreigners, coloured people, anything that they've been told to attack, they will attack. Which is what Hitler did. It's what the Tory government does here and has done, which is part of why getting out of Europe was so important for them. And this leads to perpetual war, genocide, and the total repression and murder of the working class. And this infliction of poverty is done. Obviously, me and Khaled have disagreements on this bit. By capitalism. Capitalism is an Abrahamic tool upon which to franchise out hell on earth, to create misery. But we our hands are clean. Our hands being in the Abrahamic leadership, by the way, not the people. When I ever refer to Abrahamic, I mean the leadership. And they pass this duty of repression and perpetual hatred and war onto the capitalists so that they don't look like their hands that are covered in blood, the leadership, or said philosophy and ideology, which is the Abrahamic religions. And in the West, we had a world war, which was a religious war in the, World War II and World War I. And after that, that's when human beings said, look, why don't we actually start taking control and start outlawing war, outlawing poverty, because poverty, let's not forget, is designed. There is no such thing as natural born poverty. All poverty is designed, and therefore you can design it out of society, but poverty breeds desperation, desperation breeds hatred, and hatred leads to perpetual genocide between the religions, or Abrahamic religions. You are being used as a tool, as a robot, as a slave, as a possession owned by a very top rich group to play games with your life and children. You watch them being raped. Suddenly heaven seems quite a logical conclusion to all the horrors around you. So yeah.
I mean, I don't agree, as you said already. Well, I don't agree that Abrahamic faiths are capitalistic. In fact, they're
leadership. Sorry.
Okay, sure, but like the ideologies themselves are anti-capitalistic in many ways. So they're the only. I think that, especially the Abrahamic faith, they're the only ideologies that outlaw interest. And interest is absolutely necessary for wars to be made possible. So people who know about how, I think World War One and Two, and most wars are run. First of all, you have to borrow money on interest because wars are so expensive. But as far as I know, I think people like the Rothschilds, they lent money to all directions to enable these wars in the first place. So that's really interesting aspect of the Abrahamic faith. They outlaw, if you can outlaw, because
You mean Muslim?
the Muslim, well, actually, all the religions. So I'll tell you, this is really interesting. So the Jews have been told not to lend money on interest, but they say, you know what, that's only for us. But there's no rule about us lending to non-Jews, so they lend to non-Jews on interest, but they don't lend. They're not allowed to lend money to each other amongst the Jews on interest. The Christians used to be against interest. And that's why it was only the Jews in Europe pre, World War II or whatever, that somehow were allowed to lend money on interest, because even then, interest was outlawed in Christian countries. But then somehow that crept in. So it's only really, I can't even say in Muslim countries, because even interest is starting to be lent in Muslim countries, even though it's clearly forbidden. So it's really interesting, that side of things. But also, Islam teaches that you're supposed to have your basic needs met as a citizen of the world, because first of all, the minerals, whatever you have from the land that you live in, the country that you live in, belongs to everybody in the country. So if there's oil in the country, it belongs to everybody, not just the Al Saud family, for example, in Saudi Arabia. And also other basic needs are supposed to be met in the Quran. It says water, food, shelter, and clothing. I think those are the 4 basic needs that are supposed to be given to all human beings. So I wouldn't say it's capitalistic in the normal sense of the word, but maybe in some small c capitalism, we do believe that you should have a right to property. You should be able the right to own property. You should be able to make things yourself. You shouldn't have the government dictating who should have what job. Like, should you be an artist, another person be a mathematician? That's too complicated for government to manage. So you need some sort of individual control, and that could be seen as capitalism. So as my friend Simon in Speaker's Corner said, maybe Islam is capitalism with a small c, but some social controls. Yeah. And there's also like the culture, which I mentioned earlier on. It's not just the rules that dictate how you behave, but if you're not only worried about money, say if you're poor, there's a lot of people who don't have loads of money and they're still really generous. So I'll be on a taxi ride and we have a good conversation. I'd say, please don't worry about the money. It's a very common thing. So yeah, there's all that kind of stuff, binding people together as human beings, not just as buyers and sellers of goods.
Yeah. Well, I think rose-tinted glasses is probably a little bit what's going on there. Firstly, owning property isn't what capitalism really is. From a middle class or working class level, in a capitalist system, it is all premised on the proposition of monopoly. So fundamentally, you end up with one person end up owning everything, and that person would you may have initially individual, that's what happened in the creation of America, for example. You had the Wild West, and you had individuals being brave and entrepreneurship, going out creating farms and learning to live from the ground and dedicating their blood, life and tears to that. But then the capitalist comes along and just murders or buys out everyone, ends up monopolising the system once the working class has done all the hard work, in effect, stealing that from themselves and becoming very, very wealthy, which is why we have billionaires. If that wasn't true, we wouldn't have billionaires. That they couldn't possibly exist in a system where the middle class or the working class actually own their own production, own their own communities and economic system, because you and me would just describe this, what you've been describing, but done with sincerity and legal framework, where there is a little bit of rose-tinted glasses going on up on your side a bit, because in Jordan there is a royal family. They dictate, and they dictate not only what a person is and does and should be, but not only do they dictate the economic measures of a country, but they dictate what a person is. They have a class system, and they perpetuate a class system which is an Abrahamic construct. They designed that into it, and they design the class system, and they design who the intelligent people are. They tell you who the intelligent people will be, what they will think, what they are, and they'll tell you who the working class are, and that's it. You are fixed into this rigid class system, this caste, this inability to be able to be anything else. Which is why in Abrahamic countries there are no music shops, no poetry, no communities, no community of self. Self-creating music and creating artwork or concepts and ideas, and being middle class or working class, which is middle class and working class are very intertwined entities, and the term has become separated from the what it used to be, which is not a bad thing, but it does make life complicated. So basic needs met, you are met, but if you don't conform to the government nationalistic idea of what a human being is, maybe you might be gay, maybe you might be a poet or a musician that sings a different tune, or just a person that maybe doesn't want to be part of the Abrahamic religion, then the consequences are severe, brutal and permanent, which is something which obviously I, as a human being and a creative human being, a person that likes to see the Abrahamic religions work together rather than tear each other apart, which is what the last 3,500 years of history has been. Obviously for me that is a brutal way to end the day.
So there are, I might be overemphasizing all the good things about Jordan, so we love it there. So there's an element of rose-tinted glasses, I agree. I'll whiz through some of the things you said. So you said there's no art and all that kind of stuff. There's some of the best graffiti around. So there's huge, beautiful graffiti everywhere, right? The stairs are amazing. Like they managed to, so do come for that. People do play music ad hoc, but Islam doesn't encourage it, because music is seen as something that is a little bit fake, in that it creates false feelings that we can't fully put a finger on. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might get an emotion, and it's better to use actual words when you're saying something. We prefer natural vocals rather than investing in too many guitars and things like that, when you can get obsessed with that kind of things that are not 100% real. I want to say, let's say some of the supposed negative things. So the law is really tough, I think. I'm not actually aware of how tough the law is, but my feeling is that if you do drugs or anything bad, you'll be put away and you're not sure exactly what's going to happen to you, kind of thing. And so nobody commits crime, and so we're serving.
Can I just quickly interject?
Yeah.
Do you think that's about the way that they treat drugs and people that take drugs? Is that too harsh, or do you think it's about right?
I love it.
I
personally love it. I love that even protests are limited. You can't say anything bad about the king. And why would, like, from a free speech Western perspective, we think, oh, free speech is everything. But I think we complain more than we actually do our duty to the country. If you just get on with serving the country as best you can, things will get better. If you just protest all the time, it doesn't actually help. So that's what I see. So yeah, there are some things that people consider really harsh, but I feel actually makes the society much better, like tough laws. Yeah.
So why do people who grow up Muslim take drugs?
So I would say there's a lot less drug taking in Jordan because they've got this kind of
No, that's not the question. The question is, why do people that are brought up Muslim in this idealistic scenario that you have created, why would they therefore take drugs?
There's no need to take drugs if you're really following the religion. But there are over 1 billion Muslims, I'm not even sure how many, right? So there's going to be, the typical bell curve. The average Muslim who's following it has the experience of beautiful family life, which I absolutely love in Jordan. The connection between everybody, as brothers and sisters. You don't have that empty feeling that needs to be filled with drugs, because that's what drugs are. It's just filling that empty hole inside itself. There's a beautiful TED talk by Johan Hari about lost connections, and drugs and addiction is basically just that, just filling the emptiness the lack of connection. And when you have so much connection, like when I sit outside where I get some of my bakery, we've got a seating area where people just chill out outside, and if anybody's eating, anybody's walking past, they go, "Come on, eat with us," kind of thing. So you have loads more connection. If you have more connection, you're less depressed, and you don't need to have drugs. But there are going to be people out of the billion Muslims. There are going to be people who take drugs, and I would suggest they're probably not following Islam very well.
Well, let's add another dynamic to that scenario. What's the word? That description. Let's add another dynamic to the description of this very important question about drug use in society. As you've already said, free speech is definitely repressed, and so therefore we don't know the true extent to the drug levels being taken and the unhappiness and the misery which has been experienced in Jordan or any country with an Abrahamic dictatorship which is transpiring, because it is very inconvenient if you proclaim to be the truth, an Abrahamic truth, your leaders that is, and they say follow these rules, all will be okay if you do, and suddenly you have people that are miserable, unhappy, unfulfilled, feeling empty, feeling like hollow inside, even though they've been from childhood bred on this concept of an Abrahamic religion. And which is why, one of the reasons why media and self-expression is so repressed in these Christianity and Jewish and Muslim, these Abrahamic religions, so repressed, because the inconvenient truth is that it does not fulfill a human being. There are people that, like Khalid, that are very satisfied, and I doubt that the authenticity of that statement, but Khalid does claim to be satisfied. That is a truth. But is it a fact? Well, that's something that is debatable, I suggest. But it's definitely a truth for Khalid. So in the Abrahamic religions, of course, everything that happens in Jordan you've described is, of course, the Christian ideal as well. It is where music, plays, theatre, expression. It's exactly the Muslim and Jewish and Christian all believe in this total dominant repression of this. And the only people allowed to make music, as you just said not too long ago, that you don't think governments should tell people what to be and what they are. Abrahamic is a government. It is a political system.
I mean, by the way, go on.
No, sorry.
Go on. Jordan isn't following all Islamic rules, so I don't know. Yeah.
I dispute that. So the Abrahamic governments do tell you what you are, do tell you what you will be, and any humanity that creeps out will be repressed with brutality and any means necessary, psychological terror required to repress the human being. And of course you're going to have quite a big hidden drug problem and other depressions that just never, the last 3,500 years of history has just been repeating itself, where human being is not allowed to say they dispute the common narrative which is going on in the nationalistic scenario, which is an Abrahamic religion which Khaled is part of, and which is why the West is criticised in a way wrongly, because we're allowed to say we don't agree with things, and it's seen as a negative, that because you're actually hearing what people say, think, feel, and act. And so if we don't need to go that long in the UK before you were treated just as badly as you are in Jordan or any other Arabic religion in the UK. I mean, they were openly torturing gay people in UK not that long ago. Women were allowed to vote not that long ago. And has life been improved because women now have a vote? Absolutely. We have a shared common humanity, and when people get together and are allowed to express who you are and what you are, culture grows, because a lot of what Khaled is now part of is because of this development and growth in humanity. A lot of things that Khaled is dependent on is because Khaled being a representative of a human being, by the way, not just Khaled personally, I'm trying to say. And having a phone, having heat, having education, having communication, and sophistication, which is, of course, tried to be expunged from communities, the Abrahamic communities, as much as possible. But still, that barrier is almost impossible to stop. And things like the internet, which is something of great glory and wonder. It's not all perfect, but that's because we're still quite new to this concept of a shared community, an internationally shared community. And it's something that takes time to learn and be part of, and not to be corrupted, which is something that the Abrahamic religions look to do.
I want to wrap it up before it gets to 40 minutes, though, because it'll be too long to upload.
Can we quickly talk about Trump and the election? Because the American election is on Monday.
But is that to do with me and Jordan? I could read separate.
No,
it's not.
But we've talked all about you.
But
it's been lovely.
I don't like to just random topic. Go on,
nobody's
listening by now anyway.
2 minutes.
It's 37 minutes and nobody cares. So
2 minutes on Trump.
Go on then.
I think it's relevant.
Go on. I don't think anybody's listening at this point anyway. Go on.
So, elections just a couple of days away. Donald Trump, serial rapist, abuser, absolute chronic liar, tried to rip apart the American Constitution, tried to is still trying to become a dictator, and funded by the extreme part of the Abrahamic religion, to try and turn America into the Christian ideal, which looks exactly.
So do you like Kamala Harris instead?
I'll get onto that, but good question. Which is like the Muslim countries. That's what Trump's trying to create in America. Do I like Kamala Harris? Well, she's part of the problem. She's fundamentally part of the problem. But out of the choice of the two, she's definitely, at least she believes in the illusion of democracy. The reason why I said delusion is because she is fundamentally the reason why Donald Trump has came into power. Is people like Kamala, who give very small credence to democracy and have perverted it constantly and utterly, leading to the rise of the far right. People like Donald Trump. Let's not forget, Donald Trump helped fund the Democrats for decades, but people like him for centuries have perverted parties and democracy like that there. So centuries is still an accidental slip, but it still has merit.
So what I think is going to start happening is that we're going to have more and more people voting for independents. So we think in America it's just Republicans and Democrats, but I've started hearing people saying we've had enough of both sides who support the genocide in Gaza. And so they're both controlled, And if they don't care about human beings in Gaza, they don't really care about human beings anywhere, quite frankly. So neither side care about human beings. Better start voting for new people. Let's get out of this bipolar system where you've got both sides are crap anyway. In short, yeah. So let's
Duality of politics.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's time we start making an effort, getting together communities and voting for better people we trust, rather than these people controlled by political systems who are themselves controlled by, lobbies like APAC and whatever. So let's break the system. It's already breaking in the UK. Lot more independent people getting into power. It's beginning. Corbyn and other people beginning to break the system.
Can we talk about Gaza for the last 6 minutes?
Sure.
So, just want to say just how, excuse me, sorry about that, how horrible it has been for the Muslims and Jewish people in the Middle East, and how this slaughter, this perpetual hatred, which is what I've been alluded to for this whole conversation, and since I've known Khaled and since I've been going to Speaker's Corner, has been to try and dedicate my thoughts and compassion to these groups and Christianity as well, but talking about Gaza, and how they've been played against each other under this pseudo-religious idea that land is owned by a god, and therefore you are now justified to commit any crime and murder underneath that flag of brutality, which is perpetual and never-ending if you believe that land isn't owned not by the people of this planet, but owned by an entity which is divorced from this reality that we share. Because that divorce creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum, genocide seems like a very wonderful solution to try and remedy said vacuum. And this perpetuation of the idea that Palestine, which was shared by the Semites on both sides, because let's not forget the Muslims there are Semites. This is something which is constantly forgotten, conveniently, because you now have Jewish people murdering Semites, and you've had Muslims murdering Semites, but for very different reasons. One lives in a perpetual prison of humiliation and repression. But let's not forget, before Palestine was dismantled, for that region, was dismantled and separated and segregated, Jewish people and Muslims lived together as one, as a family. Almost finished. And only when it can revert back to that status quo of a shared community, not the community supersedes God, then peace in the Middle East can transpire and be forever. And the important thing is, as I said just at the beginning of this speech about Gaza, about Palestine, about Israel, slaughter of the Jewish people, slaughter of the Muslims, and who's laughing? The weapon companies, and weapon companies are Christian owned in the West, by the way. They sit back and laugh at these two tribes, these two Semites, being perpetually at war, because when Netanyahu's policy is just creating more religious fundamentalists, guaranteeing next 1,000 years of slaughter, because when you see your family being murdered, Jewish or Muslim, you are forever sworn to an unwritten oath of revenge, thank you, revenge and vendetta. And again, the weapon companies foster this vendetta, guaranteeing their profits for the next 1,000 years.
So I'll just say very quickly, as Dus pointed out, for thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years, minimum, I think, Jews, Christian, Muslims have lived together in the Middle East in peace. It's not a religious thing, actually. It's the Zionist movement was started. It's actually fundamentally an atheist land grab movement. It's a capitalist movement. It's nothing to do with religion, but it's taking advantage. I'm having the last say, by the way, because this video is too long. It's just taking advantage of a few people who are actually mostly not even religious, but they suddenly become religious when it comes to the question of who owns the land. So they don't believe in God. They don't even believe in the God of the Torah or the Old Testament. Yet, because they're mostly secular Jews who are behind this, Zionists are mostly secular Jews. Largely don't even believe in religion. They don't even really believe in Judaism. So somehow it's just a game of manipulation. People get free land. They get bribed with money, and they're told, you get this land if you kill your neighbors, the Palestinians. As I said, I'm not even sure if I said it, but when the Jews first came to Palestine, they were welcomed. There were actually pictures of Jews coming in Nazi ships, and well, you can find it. You can search it up yourself.
Ships?
Yeah,
They had
there were ships with a Nazi swastika on it. I've seen the photos. Yeah, they're coming into Palestine because they had made an agreement.
What year is this?
I think this is before, before the Second World War.
Yeah, this is a big statement.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the photos of it. I was surprised by it myself.
You
And they
sent
were
me that?
literally, I mean, somebody showed it to me in an album, but I'll try to find it. And
Appreciate
what I saw, and this is not difficult for me to believe, especially because I've kind of heard some similar accounts by people who lived in Palestine. So just so you know, most of the people in Jordan are from Palestine. They're essentially refugees, and Jordan's basically a refugee country. We've got refugees from Libya, from Iraq, from Syria, from Palestine, all the war-torn countries, right? So, and maybe now from whatever. The point is, they were literally waving flags, welcoming, white flags, welcoming the Jews as their brothers, because we see them as part of the same tradition, an Abrahamic tradition. And I know one person who I was teaching. He said their dad gave one of their houses or one of their properties to Jews for free. That's what I remember. So it's like they are incredibly generous, the Arabs. So it doesn't surprise me that they were welcomed at first. Before, some of the Jews were.
There was Jewish people living in Palestine before.
Oh, plenty. I'm saying I agree with that, but I'm talking about the European Jews who came afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, if that wasn't clear, thanks for helping me clarify that. So, yeah, it's not religious. It's some people. It's capitalist. It's capitalistic greed directed through Zionism. That's what I think. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to end that there.
Well, can I just say goodbye?
Oh yeah, you can say bye.
Well, it's really good meeting you again. I'm not sure how long you stay in the UK, but hopefully we may be able to get another video, and if not, then fair enough. But it's been wonderful talking to you again, and having our usual little spot here, doing our usual little talk. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being positive, communicative, and engage in a conversation which can be hard and stressful, and big subjects are said here, but nevertheless still showing decency and respect, which is something we all need to do in these times of sadness and horror.
Yeah, and there's also good things happening as well. And I totally agree with all the things that you said. It's good that we're decent to each other, respect each other, even though we disagree. We come from, different ideological backgrounds, you could say. Thank you. Bye.